The first light of dawn spreads like honey across the ancient Roman hills, painting the terraced slopes in shades of amber and gold. Marcus draws his woolen cloak closer as he steps from his stone cottage, breathing in the crisp morning air that carries the promise of spring. Frost still clings to the olive trees that border his vineyard, each blade of grass crowned with tiny crystals that catch the early sun like scattered diamonds. His sandaled feet know every stone of the narrow path that winds between the vine rows. These terraces have been carved into the hillside for generations, built by his grandfather's grandfather with stones pulled from the very earth that now cradles the roots of his precious vines. The limestone retaining walls stand solid and patient, weathered by decades of seasons, holding the rich soil that will soon burst with new life. Marcus pauses at the first row, running his weathered hands along the dormant vine stems. The wood feels cold beneath his fingers, but he knows the secret warmth that lies sleeping within. His father taught him to listen with his hands, to feel for the subtle pulse that tells him winter's grip is loosening. Today, there is something different in the wood, a barely perceptible softness, a readiness that wasn't there just days before. The vineyard stretches down the hillside like a carefully woven tapestry, each row perfectly aligned with the slope to catch the morning sun and channel the mountain rains. Between the vines, wild herbs have begun to emerge from their winter hiding places. Rosemary and thyme send their gentle fragrances into the warming air, while early violets peek through the turned earth where Marcus worked his plow just weeks ago. He kneels beside a vine that has been particularly dear to him, one his father planted the year Marcus was born. Gently, he examines the junction where last year's pruned branch meets the main stem. There, small and green as new hope, a tiny bud pushes against its protective scales. The sight fills him with the quiet joy that only a vineyard keeper knows, the deep satisfaction of witnessing nature's faithful return to life. A lark begins to sing from the oak tree that shades his cottage, its melody weaving through the still air. Other birds join the morning chorus, the cheerful trill of finches, the gentle cooing of doves from the terracotta tiles of his roof. The sounds blend with the distant lowing of cattle from the valley below, where other farmers are beginning their own spring preparations. Marcus stands and continues his morning inspection, noting which sections of the vineyard show the earliest signs of awakening. The lower terraces, protected from the mountain winds and blessed with longer hours of sun, are always first to stir. Here, the buds are fuller, some already beginning to split their winter coats. He makes mental notes, planning the timing of his spring tasks with the patient precision his father taught him. The sun climbs higher, warming his shoulders through the wool of his tunic. Steam begins to rise from the damp earth, carrying with it the rich scent of soil that has been kissed by frost and rain. It is the smell of potential, of roots stirring deep in the darkness, of sap beginning its slow journey from root to branch. As he walks, Marcus remembers his father's words about reading the land's moods. The vineyard speaks to those who listen, the old man would say, pointing to subtle signs that told of coming weather, of the soil's needs, of the vine's secret preparations for the growing season ahead. The angle of the morning shadows, the color of the earth, the way the wind moves through the olive branches, all these things carry messages for those who have learned the ancient language of the land. From his position on the hillside, Marcus can see the red tile roofs of the distant village beginning to send up threads of smoke as families kindle their morning fires. The sight fills him with contentment, knowing that the wine from these very vines will grace their tables, that his work is woven into the fabric of their daily lives just as theirs is woven into his. The morning air grows gentler as the sun gains strength, and Marcus feels the first real warmth of spring touching his face. Soon, very soon, these dormant vines will explode into leaf and flower. But for now, in this perfect moment of anticipation, he stands among the sleeping rows and simply breathes in the promise of the year ahead. The ancient hills hold their secrets close, and he is their patient keeper, ready to nurture whatever gifts the seasons will bring. The first blush of dawn spreads across the 7 hills of Rome like honey poured over marble, and Marcus feels the familiar weight of bronze shears in his weathered hands. These tools, passed down from his grandfather's grandfather, have known countless seasons, countless dawns just like this one. The metal is warm to the touch, as if it remembers every vine it has ever kissed, every branch it has ever shaped with love and purpose. He stands at the edge of his vineyard, where the morning mist still clings to the terraced slopes like silk scarves draped by the gods themselves. The air is cool and clean, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and the green promise of new growth. In the distance, the city of Rome sleeps on, its citizens still wrapped in their woolen blankets, unaware of this quiet ritual that has begun before the sun has even cleared the eastern mountains. Marcus takes his first step into the rows, his sandaled feet finding the familiar path worn smooth by decades of morning walks. The vines stretch before him in perfect lines, their gnarled trunks twisted with age and wisdom. Each one tells a story, each one holds memories in its bark and branches. Some were planted by his father, others by his grandfather, and the oldest ones, the ones near the stone wall, were already ancient when his family first claimed this hillside generations ago. The pruning shears catch the growing light as he raises them to the first vine. This is not work to be rushed, not a task to be completed with haste. Each cut must be considered, each decision weighed with the patience of seasons. Too much removed, and the vine will struggle to bear fruit. Too little, and the grapes will be small and sour, unworthy of the wine that will carry his family's name. He begins with the water shoots, those eager young branches that reach skyward with desperate ambition. They must go first, for they steal strength from the fruit-bearing canes. The bronze blades slice through them with a whisper, and Marcus moves with the slow, deliberate grace of a dancer performing steps learned in childhood. His grandfather's voice echoes in his memory, patient and kind. Listen to the vine, Marcus. It will tell you what it needs. The repetitive motion settles into his bones, becoming as natural as breathing. Cut, step, examine, cut again. The sun climbs higher, painting the leaves in shades of gold and green that shift and shimmer with each gentle breeze. Somewhere in the olive grove beyond the vineyard, a thrush begins its morning song, and the melody weaves through the work like a blessing. Marcus pauses at an older vine, its trunk thick with age and scarred by countless seasons. This one knew his grandfather's touch, felt those same bronze shears in younger hands. He traces a finger along the bark, feeling the deep grooves and smooth patches where time has written its story. The vine seems to lean into his touch, grateful for the connection, for the continuity of care that flows from one generation to the next. As he works, the world around him awakens slowly. A lizard darts between the stones at the base of a vine, its movements quick and purposeful. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, and he can hear the faint sound of his wife's voice as she calls to their children, preparing them for the day ahead. But here, among the vines, time moves differently. Here, the rhythm is ancient and unhurried. The morning light grows stronger, chasing away the last wisps of mist and revealing the full beauty of the terraced hillside. Row upon row of vines stretch down toward the valley, where a stream catches the sunlight and throws it back in diamonds of reflected glory. This is his world, his responsibility, his gift to the future. Every cut he makes today will shape the harvest that comes in autumn. Every decision will echo through seasons yet to come. Marcus wipes the bronze shears clean on a cloth tucked into his belt, then moves to the next vine. The metal gleams in the morning sun, ready to continue the work that began before dawn and will continue until the light grows too strong, until the heat of midday calls him to rest in the shade of the villa's courtyard. But for now, there is only this: the weight of ancestral tools in capable hands, the whisper of bronze through living wood, and the quiet satisfaction of work that connects him to every keeper who has walked these rows before him, and to all those who will walk them long after his own hands have grown still. The morning mist clings to the hillside as Marcus makes his way along the weathered stone path that winds through his vineyard. His sandaled feet know every uneven stone, every gentle rise and fall of this ancient Roman earth. The sun has barely crested the distant hills, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and rose, and already he feels the pull of the soil calling to him. He pauses at the heart of his vineyard, where the oldest vines grow in neat, orderly rows that his grandfather planted decades ago. Here, where the slope catches the first light of dawn, Marcus kneels slowly, reverently, as if approaching a sacred altar. The earth beneath his knees is cool and slightly damp from the night's dew, and he can smell its rich, complex fragrance, a mixture of decomposed leaves, mineral stones, and something indefinably alive. With practiced hands, Marcus scoops a handful of the dark soil, letting it cascade through his fingers like the finest silk. This is not simply dirt to him. It is a living manuscript written by countless seasons, countless rains, countless cycles of growth and rest. Each grain tells a story. The small fragments of limestone speak of ancient seas that once covered these hills. The darker particles whisper of oak leaves that fell last autumn, slowly transforming into nourishment for his precious vines. He brings the soil closer to his face, inhaling deeply. The scent is earthy and clean, with hints of iron and clay. Marcus can distinguish the layers by smell alone. The topsoil rich with organic matter, the deeper clay that holds moisture through the long summer months, and beneath it all, the rocky foundation that gives his wine its distinctive mineral character. Settling more comfortably on his knees, Marcus begins his daily communion with the earth. He takes another handful and squeezes it gently, watching how it holds together, then crumbles apart. The moisture is perfect, not too wet from recent rains, not too dry from the warming spring sun. This balance is crucial. Too much water, and the roots will grow lazy and shallow. Too little, and they cannot reach deep into the hillside to find the minerals that will give his grapes their complexity. A small beetle scurries across his palm, its bronze shell gleaming in the morning light. Marcus smiles and gently places it back on the ground. These tiny creatures are his allies, aerating the soil with their tunnels, breaking down organic matter, creating the intricate web of life that supports his vines. He has learned to read their presence like an oracle reads sacred signs. Where the beneficial insects thrive, the soil is healthy. Where they are absent, something needs attention. Moving slowly along the row, Marcus examines different sections of his vineyard. Here, near the older vines, the soil is darker, richer, seasoned by decades of fallen grape leaves and pruned canes that have decomposed back into the earth. The vines here have sent their roots deep, sometimes 20 feet or more into the hillside, creating partnerships with fungi and bacteria that his grandfather could never have imagined but somehow understood. In another section where he planted new vines 3 years ago, the soil is lighter, hungrier. Marcus reaches into a leather pouch at his side and withdraws a handful of compost, dark, crumbly material made from grape pomace, the skins and seeds left over from last year's harvest. Nothing is wasted here. Even the remnants of winemaking return to nourish the next generation of grapes. He works the compost into the soil with his fingers, feeling it blend and disappear into the earth. This is ancient alchemy, he thinks, transforming the remains of one harvest into the promise of the next. His movements are meditative, rhythmic, like a prayer repeated over and over until it becomes part of his breathing. The sun climbs higher, warming his back as he moves from vine to vine. Each plant speaks to him through the soil around its roots. This one needs more drainage. He makes a mental note to add gravel here. That one would benefit from more organic matter. Another shows signs that its roots are finding the perfect balance, growing neither too quickly nor too slowly. As the morning progresses, Marcus finds himself completely absorbed in this silent conversation with the earth. His hands are stained dark with soil, his knees dusty from kneeling, but his spirit feels light and connected to something timeless. This is the same ritual his grandfather performed, and his grandfather's grandfather before him. The soil remembers them all, holds their knowledge in its countless particles. When he finally rises, brushing the earth from his hands, Marcus feels the deep satisfaction that comes from understanding. The soil has shared its secrets for another day, and he has listened with the patience and reverence it deserves. Tomorrow, he will return to this same conversation, reading the next chapter in the endless story written in the earth beneath his feet. The morning mist clings to the terraced hillsides like a whispered promise, and Marcus steps from his stone cottage into the cool embrace of early spring. The air carries the scent of damp earth and something else, something green and alive that wasn't there just days before. He wraps his woolen cloak closer around his shoulders and begins his ritual walk among the vines, his sandaled feet finding familiar paths between the orderly rows. The vineyard stretches before him in gentle terraces carved into the Roman hills generations ago, each level following the natural contours of the land. The wooden stakes stand like silent sentinels, their weathered surfaces dark with morning dew. But today, something magical has occurred during the night. Along the gnarled brown stems of the vines, tiny emerald jewels have appeared, the first green shoots of the season. Marcus kneels beside the nearest vine, his weathered hands hovering just above a delicate bud. It's no larger than his thumbnail, yet perfectly formed, with miniature leaves folded like praying hands. The pale green is so tender it seems to glow in the gentle morning light. He can hardly believe that from these fragile beginnings will come the rich, purple grapes that will fill his amphora come harvest time. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist and revealing the full extent of nature's overnight transformation. Row after row shows the same miracle, thousands upon thousands of tiny shoots, each one positioned with mathematical precision along the vine's ancient framework. Marcus moves slowly between the rows, his eyes scanning each plant with the practiced gaze of one who has witnessed this rebirth many times before, yet never grows tired of its wonder. He carries with him a small bronze knife, its blade worn smooth by countless seasons of careful use. His grandfather carried this same knife, and his grandfather before him, each generation adding their touch to its polished handle. Now it's Marcus's turn to continue the ancient dance between man and vine, guiding nature's abundance with gentle intervention. The young shoots vary in their vigor. Some emerge strong and straight, reaching confidently toward the warming sun. Others appear more tentative, their leaves still tightly furled, waiting for just the right moment to unfold. Marcus studies each one, his fingers barely brushing their surface as he makes mental notes. This one shows promise for bearing fruit. That cluster of 3 shoots must be thinned to allow the strongest to flourish. With infinite care, he begins the delicate work of selection. The vine's energy is precious, and like a wise parent, Marcus must choose which children will receive the greatest portion of nourishment. He identifies the most promising shoots, those positioned perfectly to catch the morning sun, those growing at the ideal angle from the main stem. These will become the year's primary growth, the foundation for autumn's harvest. The excess shoots, though perfectly healthy, must be removed. Marcus pinches them gently between his fingers, feeling for that precise moment when they separate cleanly from the vine without damage to the main stem. Each small sacrifice ensures that the remaining shoots will grow stronger, their leaves broader, their eventual fruit clusters more abundant. The discarded shoots fall to the earth below, where they will decompose and feed the soil that nurtures their parent plants. As the morning progresses, the vineyard comes alive around him. Bees begin their early explorations, drawn by the sweet promise of flowers yet to come. A red-winged blackbird calls from the olive tree at the vineyard's edge, its song echoing across the hills where other vineyards mirror his own green awakening. In the distance, smoke rises from kitchen fires in the valley below, where the village begins its daily rhythm. Marcus pauses to wipe his brow and survey his progress. 2 full rows completed, with dozens more awaiting his attention. But there's no hurry in this work, no rushing the careful evaluation that each vine deserves. This is the meditation of the vine keeper, this quiet communion with growing things, this partnership between human wisdom and nature's relentless creativity. He thinks of his grandfather who taught him that the vine remembers everything, every kindness, every neglect, every choice made during these crucial early weeks. The old man's voice echoes in his memory. Speak to them with your hands, Marcus. They will listen if you are patient. The sun climbs higher still, warming the stone terraces and encouraging the tiny shoots to stretch just a little further toward the light. Marcus continues his gentle work, moving from vine to vine like a physician making rounds, ensuring each plant receives exactly what it needs to transform these promising beginnings into autumn's golden abundance. In this peaceful rhythm of selection and nurture, surrounded by the ancient hills where countless generations have performed this same careful dance, Marcus finds the deep satisfaction that comes from participating in something far greater than himself, the eternal cycle of growth, harvest, and renewal that has blessed these Roman hills since time immemorial. The morning mist clings to the hillsides like a gentle embrace as Marcus walks the familiar paths between his vines. The air carries the promise of spring, cool and fresh against his skin, while dewdrops catch the first rays of sunlight like tiny jewels scattered across the leaves. Today feels different, charged with anticipation, for Gaius Veteranus is coming to share the sacred knowledge of grafting. Marcus has spent weeks preparing for this moment, selecting the perfect rootstock from the wild vines that grow along the rocky slopes. These ancient plants, twisted and gnarled by years of harsh weather, possess a strength that cultivated vines cannot match. Their roots run deep into the limestone soil, drawing minerals and moisture with remarkable efficiency. Yet their fruit is small and bitter, lacking the sweetness that makes wine truly memorable. The sound of sandals on stone announces Gaius's arrival long before Marcus sees him. The old vintner moves with deliberate care along the terraced paths, his weathered face already scanning the vineyard with the practiced eye of one who has spent 60 years among the vines. His hands, stained purple from countless harvests, carry a small leather satchel containing the tools of his craft. The timing is perfect, Gaius observes, his voice carrying the gentle authority of age and experience. The sap is rising, but the buds have not yet begun to swell. The wood is ready to accept new life. They walk together to where Marcus has prepared the workspace, a simple wooden table set beneath the spreading branches of an ancient olive tree. The dappled shade provides cool relief from the strengthening sun, while a gentle breeze carries the mingled scents of wild herbs and warming earth. Gaius unpacks his tools with ritualistic care. Sharp bronze knives kept honed to perfection, strips of cloth woven from the finest linen, and small pots of pine resin that will seal their work. The lesson begins with selection. Gaius's fingers trace along the hardy rootstock, feeling for the subtle signs that indicate the best grafting point. Here, he murmurs, pressing gently against a section of bark. Feel how the wood gives slightly. This tells us the cambium layer is thick and active. This is where new growth will flourish. Marcus watches intently as the old master makes the first cut, his blade moving with confidence born of decades of practice. The incision is clean and precise, creating a smooth surface that will accept the graft wood perfectly. There is something almost sacred in this moment, this joining of wild strength with cultivated refinement. The scion wood comes from Marcus's finest vines, selected for their ability to produce grapes of exceptional quality. These cuttings, no thicker than a man's thumb, carry within them the genetic memory of countless perfect harvests. Gaius shapes their ends with careful cuts, creating wedges that will nestle perfectly against the rootstock. Now comes the moment of truth, Gaius says softly, his eyes twinkling with the satisfaction of sharing ancient knowledge. The joining must be precise. Too loose and the graft will fail. Too tight and we risk crushing the delicate tissues that must grow together. Their hands work in harmony, 4 weathered palms guiding the precious wood into perfect alignment. The fit is so exact, it seems as though nature herself designed these pieces to come together. Marcus holds the union steady while Gaius wraps the joint with linen strips, his movements quick and sure despite his advanced years. The final step involves sealing the graft with warm pine resin. The sweet, sharp scent fills the air as Gaius applies the protective coating with a small brush made from finest horsehair. This barrier will keep moisture and disease at bay, while allowing the miracle of fusion to occur beneath. As they work, Gaius shares stories of grafts he has made in years past, of failures that taught him patience and successes that filled entire amphorae with golden wine. His voice carries the rhythm of the seasons, of spring plantings and autumn harvests, of the endless cycle that connects all who tend the vine. The sun climbs higher, warming their backs as they complete their work. Each successful graft represents hope made manifest, a bridge between wild endurance and cultivated excellence. In time, these unions will produce fruit that combines the best of both worlds. Grapes with the intensity that comes from deep roots and hardy stalk, yet possessing the refined flavors that make truly memorable wine. As the morning draws toward noon, Marcus and Gaius step back to admire their work. 20 new grafts dot the vineyard like promises of future harvests. In the gentle breeze, the vines seem to whisper their approval, ready to nurture these new unions through the warming days ahead. The ancient wisdom has been passed from master to student, ensuring that the art of the vine will continue to flourish in these blessed Roman hills. The morning sun filters through the olive trees as Marcus makes his way to the vineyard's edge, where tall piles of freshly cut wood await his skilled hands. The air carries the sweet scent of grape blossoms mixed with the earthy smell of damp soil, still cool from the night's gentle dew. Today, he will begin the ancient art of training the young vines, a practice passed down through generations of vineyard keepers like sacred knowledge whispered from father to son. Marcus runs his weathered fingers along a piece of seasoned oak, feeling for the grain and testing its strength. The wood is perfect, strong enough to support the weight of mature vines laden with fruit, yet flexible enough to bend with the mountain winds that sweep down from the distant hills. He selects each piece with the care of a sculptor choosing marble, knowing that these supports will stand for decades, perhaps even centuries, bearing witness to countless harvests. With practiced movements, he drives the first wooden stake deep into the rich earth beside a young vine. The rhythmic sound of his mallet echoes across the terraced hillside, a gentle percussion that seems to harmonize with the distant bleating of sheep and the soft rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Each stake must be placed with precision. Too close and the vine will be cramped, too far and it will lack proper support as it reaches toward the sun. The young vines, now knee-high and vibrant green, seem eager for his guidance. Their tender shoots reach in all directions, seeking light and space with the innocent enthusiasm of youth. Marcus approaches each vine like an old friend, speaking softly as he works. His hands move with the gentle authority of someone who understands that growth cannot be forced, only encouraged and directed with patience and wisdom. He begins to weave the flexible shoots between the wooden supports, creating a living tapestry against the morning sky. His fingers work delicately, never gripping too tightly, always allowing the vine its natural movement while guiding it along the predetermined path. This is where art meets agriculture. Each vine becomes a sculpture shaped not just by his hands, but by years of careful observation and deep understanding of how grapevines prefer to grow. The work requires both strength and finesse. Marcus's shoulders strain as he lifts and positions the heavier support beams, connecting them with rope made from twisted hemp. The rope has been soaked in olive oil to protect it from the weather, and it gleams golden in the strengthening sunlight. Between the larger supports, he weaves smaller branches, creating a framework that will eventually disappear beneath the lush canopy of mature vines. As he works, Marcus remembers his grandfather's teachings. The old man had shown him how to read a vine's character, which shoots would bear the finest fruit, which branches needed encouragement, and which should be gently redirected. Every vine has its own personality, his grandfather had said, and a good keeper learns to work with nature, not against it. The memory brings a peaceful smile to Marcus's face as he continues his methodical work. The sun climbs higher, warming his back as he moves from vine to vine. Sweat beads on his forehead, but he pays it no mind. This is meditative work, requiring his full attention and presence. Each twist of hemp rope, each gentle guidance of a growing shoot, connects him to the eternal cycle of growth and harvest that has sustained his family and his community for countless generations. By midday, an entire row of vines stands transformed. What began as wild, reaching shoots now follows elegant lines of wood and rope, creating patterns that please both the eye and the practical needs of the growing plants. The young vines seem to sense their new structure, their leaves already turning to catch the optimal angles of sunlight that will filter through their carefully arranged canopy. Marcus steps back to admire his morning's work, wiping his hands on the rough cloth tied at his waist. The vineyard stretches before him in neat, orderly rows, each one a testament to the marriage of human skill and natural beauty. Tomorrow he will continue with the next row, and the next, until every vine in the vineyard wears its crown of wooden supports like jewelry fit for the gods themselves. The work is far from finished, but already he can envision the autumn harvest heavy clusters of purple grapes hanging from these very supports, the culmination of a year's worth of patient tending and careful craftsmanship. The morning sun filters through the canopy of vine leaves, casting dappled patterns of gold and emerald across the pathways between the rows. Marcus steps into what he has come to think of as his green cathedral, where the vines have grown tall and full, their branches intertwining overhead to form natural archways of living foliage. The air beneath this verdant ceiling is cool and sweet, filled with the earthy scent of rich soil and the subtle fragrance of developing grapes. He moves slowly along the familiar paths, his sandaled feet making soft sounds against the packed earth. Above him, thousands of grape clusters hang like precious jewels, still small and hard, their pale green surfaces dusted with the finest bloom. Each cluster represents promise, the potential for the deep, ruby wine that will grace tables throughout the empire come autumn. But for now, they are simply part of this peaceful sanctuary he tends with such care. The leaves rustle gently in the warm summer breeze, creating a symphony of whispered conversations that only he seems to understand. Marcus pauses beside a particularly vigorous vine, running his weathered fingers along its sturdy trunk, feeling the rough texture of bark that has weathered many seasons. He examines the shoots that have grown since his last visit, noting how the plant reaches always toward the light, its tendrils curling around the wooden stakes with an almost purposeful grace. As he works, checking each vine for signs of stress or disease, Marcus becomes aware of the profound silence that surrounds him. Here, in these green corridors, the noise of the nearby villa fades to nothing. Even the sounds of the bustling household, the calls of servants, and the laughter of children playing in the courtyard seem to belong to another world entirely. This is his realm, where time moves at the pace of growing things, measured not in hours but in the gradual swelling of fruit and the slow dance of leaves responding to sun and shadow. He reaches up to adjust a cluster that hangs too heavily, supporting it with a gentle touch against a nearby branch. The grapes feel firm beneath his palm, their skin smooth and taut with the promise of sweetness to come. In a few short weeks, they will begin their transformation from green to purple, but for now they remain in this perfect state of becoming, suspended between spring's tentative beginning and autumn's generous harvest. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher, and Marcus removes his wide-brimmed hat to wipe his brow. A gentle breeze moves through the vineyard, and he stands still for a moment, letting it cool his skin while he listens to the sounds it makes as it travels through the leaves. There is something almost musical in the way the foliage responds, a rustling chorus that speaks of contentment and healthy growth. Moving deeper into the vineyard, Marcus notices how the light changes as it filters down through the increasingly dense canopy. Here, where the vines have grown most luxuriantly, the green light takes on an almost underwater quality, soft and diffused, creating a sense of being in some enchanted grotto rather than an ordinary hillside. He breathes deeply, taking an air that seems to have been purified by its journey through so many leaves, each one working silently to transform sunlight into the energy that will eventually become wine. A small bird alights on a branch near his head, regarding him with bright, curious eyes before flitting away to disappear into the green maze. Marcus smiles at this brief encounter, reminded that his vineyard is home to many creatures beyond the vines themselves. He has often observed the way wildlife moves through these corridors, finding shelter and sustenance among the carefully tended rows. As he continues his slow progress through the vineyard, Marcus reflects on the patience this work requires. Unlike the hurried pace of city life or the urgent demands of military campaigns, the vineyard teaches a different kind of time, one measured in seasons rather than heartbeats. Here, everything happens in its proper moment, and no amount of worry or haste can speed the natural process of growth and ripening. The sun is now directly overhead, casting short shadows and filling the green cathedral with a warm, honeyed light. Marcus pauses in a small clearing where several rows intersect, creating a natural chapel within his verdant sanctuary. Standing in this peaceful space, surrounded by the gentle sounds of leaves and the subtle perfume of earth and growing things, he feels a profound sense of gratitude for this life he has chosen, this quiet partnership with the ancient rhythms of the land. The vineyard will wait patiently for his return tomorrow, as it has waited through countless summers before, growing and changing with the unhurried grace that only nature truly understands. The morning sun filters through the vine leaves in patterns of gold and green, casting dancing shadows across the terraced hillside where Marcus walks with the measured pace of one who has learned to move in harmony with nature's rhythm. His weathered hands, stained purple from seasons of harvest, reach out to touch the miraculous transformation that has occurred overnight in his vineyard. Where just days ago there were only the delicate white flowers of the vine's bloom, now hang perfect miniature clusters of grapes, each no larger than a peppercorn, gleaming like tiny emeralds in the gentle light. These are nature's first promises, small and tender, yet carrying within them the potential for the rich, complex wines that will grace Roman tables in the months to come. Marcus pauses at the first row of vines, his eyes scanning the developing clusters with the practiced gaze of one who has witnessed this miracle for 30 summers. Each cluster tells its own story. Some hang heavy and full, their grapes packed closely together like small green pearls on nature's most precious necklace. Others are sparser, their grapes spread wider along the stem, each one claiming its own space in the warm Italian air. The vineyard keeper's fingers move with infinite gentleness as he begins the ancient ritual of thinning. This is perhaps the most delicate work of the growing season, requiring not just knowledge but intuition. Too many clusters will produce wine that lacks depth and character. Too few and the harvest will disappoint. Marcus has learned to read the language of the vines, to understand which clusters show the greatest promise and which must be sacrificed for the greater good. He selects a vine heavy with developing fruit and considers its offerings. 7 clusters hang from this single plant, each one reaching toward the sun with quiet determination. But Marcus knows that only 4 should remain if the wine is to achieve its full potential. His fingers find the smallest cluster first, the one that trails slightly behind the others in development. With a gentle twist, he removes it, placing it carefully in the basket at his side where it will join the compost that will nourish next year's growth. The work continues in peaceful meditation, each decision made with care and respect for the vine's generous nature. Marcus moves between the rows like a careful gardener tending the most precious of crops, his footsteps soft on the sun-warmed earth. The air is filled with the green scent of growing things, the subtle perfume of grape leaves warming in the morning sun, and the distant sound of bees drawn to the vineyard's abundance. As he works, Marcus observes the subtle differences between varieties. The Sangiovese clusters hang with elegant poise, their grapes already showing hints of the deep color they will achieve at harvest. The Trebbiano displays its characteristic tight bunches, each grape a perfect sphere catching the light like morning dew. Each variety speaks its own language, tells its own story of soil and sun, and the careful hand of the vintner. The morning progresses slowly, unhurried, as time seems to move differently among the vines. Marcus finds himself drawn into the peaceful rhythm of the work, the quiet satisfaction of nurturing something greater than himself. Each cluster he chooses to keep is an act of faith in the future, a belief that the summer sun and gentle rains will transform these tiny green promises into fruit worthy of the finest Roman wines. A gentle breeze stirs the vine leaves, creating a soft whisper that seems to carry the secrets of countless harvests. Marcus pauses in his work to listen, feeling the connection between himself and all the vineyard keepers who have walked these hills before him. The vines remember, season after season, the careful hands that have tended them, the patient work that transforms simple fruit into liquid poetry. By midday, Marcus has moved through half the vineyard, leaving behind him vines that seem to exhale with relief, their energy now focused on fewer, more promising clusters. Each remaining bunch of grapes hangs with new purpose, chosen for its potential to capture the essence of this particular hillside, this specific season, this moment in the eternal cycle of growth and harvest. The sun climbs higher, warming the stones between the vine rows and drawing from the earth the mineral richness that will eventually find its way into the grapes themselves. Marcus settles into the shade of an ancient olive tree at the vineyard's edge, allowing himself a moment to survey his morning's work. The vines stand straighter somehow, their purpose clarified, their destiny focused on creating something truly extraordinary in the golden days of summer that lie ahead. The morning sun filters through the canopy of vine leaves as Marcus walks the familiar rows of his vineyard, his weathered hands running along the growing clusters of grapes. The fruit has swelled beautifully with the recent summer rains, each grape catching the early light like tiny green jewels suspended from their stems. The air carries the sweet scent of ripening fruit mixed with the earthy fragrance of damp soil, and Marcus breathes deeply, feeling the satisfaction that comes from months of careful tending. But with this abundance comes responsibility. The grapes are at their most vulnerable now, plump and inviting to every bird that soars over the Roman hills. Marcus has learned over the years that protection must come not through harsh measures, but through gentle deterrence and natural harmony. He begins his work methodically, moving through each section of the vineyard with the patience of someone who understands that good things take time. From his workshop, Marcus carries bundles of sun-bleached cloth and sturdy wooden stakes. The scarecrows he builds are not fearsome figures, but rather simple guardians that dance gently in the Mediterranean breeze. He shapes the wooden frames with care, wrapping them in worn tunics that flutter like friendly spirits among the vines. As he positions each scarecrow, he considers the sight lines carefully, ensuring they will catch the attention of approaching birds while creating a welcoming rhythm throughout the vineyard. The bronze discs come next, a technique his father taught him decades ago. Marcus has collected these thin circles of metal over many seasons, some hammered from old coins, others cut from discarded vessels. Now he hangs them at strategic points throughout the vineyard, where they will catch and scatter the sunlight in brilliant flashes. As the morning progresses, these bronze sentinels begin their silent work, sending dancing patterns of light across the vine rows that confuse and redirect the flocks of starlings and sparrows that might otherwise feast on his precious fruit. But Marcus knows that true protection comes from understanding nature's own balance. He moves quietly among the vines, observing the small creatures that make their home here. A praying mantis sits motionless on a vine leaf, its alien eyes scanning for aphids and other pests. Marcus nods approvingly and moves on, careful not to disturb this natural hunter. In another section, he notices the delicate webs of spiders stretched between the vine supports, dewdrops still clinging to the silk threads like nature's own jewelry. The beneficial insects are his greatest allies, and Marcus has learned to encourage their presence. He allows patches of wild herbs to grow at the vineyard's edges, lavender, rosemary, and thyme that bloom throughout the summer months. These flowering plants draw the helpful creatures, the tiny wasps that prey on vine-damaging insects, the ladybugs that feast on aphids, and the bees that ensure proper pollination. As he works, Marcus can hear the gentle humming of these industrious insects, a peaceful soundtrack to his morning labors. When storm clouds gather over the hills, Marcus prepares different protections. He checks the drainage channels he has carved between the vine rows, ensuring that heavy rains will flow away from the roots rather than pooling and causing rot. The reed mats he weaves provide shelter for the most exposed clusters, creating little roofs that shield the grapes from hail while still allowing air to circulate freely. As the day grows warmer, Marcus takes time to examine individual grape clusters, his experienced fingers gently moving aside leaves to check for signs of disease or pest damage. Each cluster tells a story of sun and rain, of cool nights and warm days. He finds satisfaction in this intimate knowledge of his vines, understanding each plant's individual character and needs. The afternoon brings a visit from old Gaius, a neighboring vineyard keeper whose wisdom spans 5 decades among these hills. The two men walk slowly through the rows, speaking in quiet voices about the season's progress. Gaius admires Marcus's protective measures, nodding approvingly at the dancing bronze discs and the strategic placement of the cloth guardians. They share observations about the weather patterns, the behavior of the birds, and the subtle signs that indicate how the harvest might unfold. As evening approaches and Marcus completes his protective measures, he stands at the edge of his vineyard and surveys his work. The bronze discs catch the golden light of the setting sun, creating a constellation of gentle flashes across the landscape. The cloth scarecrows sway peacefully in the evening breeze, and the beneficial insects continue their quiet work among the vines. The grapes hang safely in their green abundance, growing sweeter with each passing day under the watchful care of their human guardian. In this moment, surrounded by the fruits of his patient labor and the natural harmony he has cultivated, Marcus feels the deep contentment that comes from working in partnership with the land, protecting and nurturing the gifts that will soon grace Roman tables throughout the empire. The first hint of change arrives with the morning light, casting long golden shadows across the terraced hillsides of Marcus's vineyard. He walks the familiar paths between the vine rows, his sandaled feet moving quietly over the packed earth, still cool from the night's embrace. The September air carries a different quality now, thinner, crisper, touched with the faintest whisper of autumn's approach. Marcus pauses beside a cluster of Sangiove's grapes, their skins still predominantly green but showing the first blush of transformation. He cups the cluster gently in his weathered palm, feeling the weight of the fruit, the subtle firmness that speaks of sugar beginning to concentrate within. The grapes are no longer the hard, bright green marbles of early summer. They have softened, rounded, begun their slow dance toward ripeness. With the practiced eye of 20 harvests, he examines each vine with quiet reverence. Here, a cluster of white Trebbiano grapes shows the faintest golden undertone, like honey mixed with morning sunlight. There, the Montepulciano displays its first purple blush along the grape skins closest to the sun. The transformation is subtle, almost secretive, as if the vines are whispering their ancient secrets to those patient enough to listen. Marcus plucks a single grape from a promising cluster and rolls it between his fingers, feeling the skin's texture. It yields slightly under gentle pressure, not the hard resistance of unripe fruit, but not yet the full softness of harvest time. He places the grape on his tongue, biting through the skin to release the juice within. The liquid is sweet now, much sweeter than a month ago, but still carries the bright acidity that will balance the final wine. The morning ritual continues as he moves deeper into the vineyard, his wicker basket collecting samples from different sections. Each area of the hillside ripens at its own pace. The southern slopes always first, blessed with the most generous sun, while the northern faces lag behind by a week or more. This natural timing extends the harvest season, allowing Marcus to pick each variety at its perfect moment. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves, creating a soft, rustling symphony that has become the soundtrack of these September days. The sound is different from summer's lusher music, drier now, more delicate, as the leaves themselves begin their own subtle transformation. Some show the faintest yellow edges, while others display tiny brown spots where the season's heat has left its gentle mark. Marcus approaches his favorite testing spot, a flat stone worn smooth by generations of vineyard keepers who came before him. Here, he crushes his morning samples, mixing the juice from different clusters to gauge the overall progress of each variety. The liquid catches the light like liquid amber and amethyst, promising the jewel-toned wines that will emerge from winter's patient fermentation. The sugar content tells its own story through sweetness on his palate. Too little, and the grapes need more time under the warming sun. Too much, and the harvest window begins to narrow. But this morning's samples speak of perfect progress, sweetness building steadily while the essential acids remain in harmony, creating that delicate balance that transforms simple grape juice into something transcendent. As the sun climbs higher, painting the hillsides in shades of gold and amber, Marcus notices other signs of the approaching harvest. The wasp population has increased, drawn by the sweetening fruit. Birds circle overhead more frequently, their sharp eyes noting the same changes that Marcus monitors daily. Even the air itself seems different, heavier with the perfume of ripening fruit, touched with the earthier sense of changing seasons. He pauses to watch a cluster of deep purple grapes catching the morning light, each individual grape glowing like a tiny lantern. The transformation happening within each berry is nothing short of miraculous. Starches converting to sugars, acids reaching their perfect concentration, flavors developing their complex symphony. Nature's ancient chemistry unfolds at its own unhurried pace, guided by sun and soil, rain and time. The color change is more than mere aesthetics. It signals the approaching crescendo of the vineyard year, the moment when all of Marcus's careful tending will culminate in harvest. But for now, he simply watches and waits, sampling and assessing, allowing the grapes their gradual metamorphosis from summer's bright promise to autumn's sweet fulfillment. As he makes his way back toward the villa, basket of samples in hand, Marcus carries with him the quiet satisfaction of witnessing another year's miracle. The grapes will be ready soon, perhaps 2 weeks, perhaps 3. But today, he simply honors their patient transformation, grateful to serve as guardian of this ancient dance between vine and season, between human care and nature's perfect timing. The morning mist clings to the hillsides like a gentle embrace as Marcus makes his way through the vineyard, his weathered sandals silent on the dew-dampened earth. The air carries the sweet promise of harvest, that distinctive fragrance that comes when grapes have reached their perfect moment of ripeness. He pauses at the edge of his terraced slopes, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of tradition and responsibility settling comfortably on his shoulders like a familiar cloak. In the cool depths of the villa's storage rooms, ancient stone vessels await their annual awakening. These massive containers, some older than Marcus himself, have witnessed countless harvests, their surfaces smooth and cool to the touch. He runs his hands along their curved walls, checking for any hairline cracks that might have appeared during the quiet months of storage. Each vessel tells its own story through subtle variations in color and texture, carved by generations of skilled artisans whose names are lost to time but whose craftsmanship endures. The cleaning ritual begins with ceremony and patience. Marcus carries amphora after amphora of clear spring water from the villa's courtyard fountain, the liquid catching flecks of morning sunlight as it flows. He scrubs each vessel with bundles of dried lavender and rosemary, the herbs releasing their oils and fragrance into the stone, blessing the containers that will soon cradle his precious harvest. The sound of water against stone creates a gentle rhythm that echoes through the cool chambers, a meditation in preparation. Outside, in his workshop beneath the spreading olive tree, Marcus tends to his collection of bronze tools. These implements, passed down through 3 generations of his family, gleam with the patina of countless harvests. He tests the edge of each curved pruning knife against his thumb, feeling for the perfect sharpness that will allow clean cuts without bruising the delicate fruit. The whetstones sing their ancient song as he draws each blade across their surface, sparks of bronze dust catching the dappled sunlight that filters through the olive leaves above. His harvest baskets, woven from young willow shoots by the village craftsmen, receive their own careful inspection. Marcus examines each weave, looking for loose strands or weak spots that might give way under the weight of heavy grape clusters. The baskets smell faintly of the riverside where the willows grew, carrying with them the memory of flowing water and cool shade. He repairs too with nimble fingers, his movements sure and practiced, adding strength where time has worn the fibers thin. The afternoon brings visits to neighboring farms, where Marcus speaks with the seasonal workers who will join his harvest crew. These are men and women he has worked with for years, their faces familiar as old friends, their skills tested by previous seasons. They gather in the shade of a massive fig tree, sharing wine and olives while discussing the timing of the harvest, the weather patterns, and the particular needs of this year's crop. Old Gaius, whose back may be bent but whose eye for ripe grapes remains unmatched, examines a cluster Marcus has brought for inspection. The elderly man rolls the fruit between his weathered fingers, feeling for the perfect balance of firmness and give that signals readiness. His apprentice, young Lucius, watches intently, learning the subtle art of reading grapes through touch and sight, knowledge that cannot be written down but must be passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. As evening approaches, Marcus walks once more through his vineyard, this time accompanied by his faithful dog, who trots contentedly beside him. The late sunlight transforms the grape clusters into jewels of amber and deep purple, each vine heavy with promise. He stops frequently, tasting fruit from different sections, feeling how the day's warmth has concentrated the sugars, how the cool nights have preserved the vital acids that will give his wine its structure and life. The sun settles lower, painting the Roman hills in shades of gold and rose. From his terraced slopes, Marcus can see other vineyards preparing for their own harvests, thin columns of smoke rising from workshops where other keepers sharpen their tools and prepare their vessels. The landscape hums with quiet activity, a symphony of preparation that has played out in these hills for centuries beyond counting. In the gathering twilight, Marcus returns to his villa, where his wife has prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and the last preserved fruits from their orchard. They eat in comfortable silence, both understanding that these are the final peaceful evenings before the joyful chaos of harvest begins. The stars emerge one by one above the vineyard, ancient witnesses to the eternal cycle of growth, harvest, and renewal that defines their lives among these gentle, timeless hills. The first light of September dawn painted the Roman hills in shades of amber and rose, casting long shadows between the orderly rows of vines that had grown heavy with their precious burden. Marcus stood at the edge of his vineyard, breathing in the cool morning air that carried the sweet fragrance of ripe grapes and the earthy scent of dew-dampened soil. This was the day he had been waiting for all season long, the harvest dawn. The sun had barely crested the distant hills when the sound of approaching voices drifted across the vineyard. One by one, the harvest workers emerged from the morning mist, their faces bright with anticipation. These were not strangers to Marcus, but trusted friends who returned each September, drawn by the promise of good work and the joy that came with gathering nature's gift. Old Gaius shuffled forward with his weathered hands already reaching for his cutting knife, while young Helena carried a stack of freshly woven baskets, their golden reeds still fragrant from yesterday's weaving. Marcus raised his hand in greeting, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet morning air. "My friends," he called, "the grapes are singing to us today. Can you hear them?" The workers paused, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, and soft laughter rippled through the group. It was an old tradition, this listening to the vineyard's song, and it marked the true beginning of their sacred work. They moved together into the first row, their footsteps creating a gentle rhythm on the packed earth between the vines. Each worker carried a sharp curved knife and a woven basket, tools that had remained unchanged for generations. The grape clusters hung like jeweled ornaments, their deep purple skins dusted with the finest bloom that spoke of perfect ripeness. Marcus reached for the first cluster, cradling it gently in his palm before making a clean cut at the stem. The grapes settled into his basket with the softest whisper, and the harvest had truly begun. As the morning progressed, the vineyard filled with the peaceful sounds of methodical work. The snick of knives cutting through stems created a steady percussion, while the gentle thud of full clusters dropping into baskets added bass notes to the harvest symphony. Conversation flowed as easily as honey, with workers sharing stories of past harvests, observations about the quality of this year's fruit, and gentle jokes that kept spirits high despite the careful concentration their work required. Helena began to hum an old harvest song, her voice sweet and clear in the warming air. One by one, the other workers joined in, their voices blending in harmonies that had been passed down through countless generations. The melody rose and fell with the rhythm of their cutting, creating a musical backdrop that seemed to make the work itself become a dance. Even the vines seemed to sway in time with the ancient tune. The sun climbed higher, warming the workers' backs and releasing the full perfume of the ripening grapes. Each cluster was examined with the practiced eye of experience before being cut. Some were set aside for the finest wine, others destined for the daily table wine that would sustain the household through the coming year. Nothing was wasted, nothing overlooked. This was work that demanded both skill and intuition, qualities that Marcus had spent years developing in his trusted team. By mid-morning, the first baskets were full to overflowing with clusters of perfect grapes. Young boys appeared as if by magic to carry the heavy loads to the pressing area, their bare feet making no sound on the well-worn paths between the rows. The sight of those first full baskets brought smiles to every face, a visible promise of the wine that would emerge from this day's labor. Marcus paused in his cutting to survey his vineyard and his workers. The morning light had grown golden, warming the hillside and creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted gently with each passing cloud. His people worked with the easy confidence that came from years of experience, their movements graceful and economical. This was more than work. It was a celebration of the partnership between human hands and nature's generosity. The harvest would continue through the day, each hour bringing its own rhythm and rewards. But in this perfect moment, with the morning sun blessing their efforts and the ancient songs floating across the vineyard, Marcus felt the deep satisfaction that came only from work well done in harmony with the turning seasons. The grapes sang their sweetest song, and grateful hands answered with the gentle music of harvest dawn. The morning mist still clings to the hillsides as Marcus pushes open the heavy wooden doors of the pressing room. The stone chamber welcomes him with its familiar coolness, a sanctuary carved into the earth where the year's work will finally reach its most sacred moment. Sunlight filters through the high windows, casting long golden bars across the worn flagstones, illuminating motes of dust that dance in the still air like tiny spirits celebrating the harvest. The pressing room has stood unchanged for generations, its massive stone walls holding the memories of countless harvests. The great wooden beam of the press dominates the space, its oak surface polished smooth by decades of use. Beneath it, the circular stone platform waits patiently, its shallow channels carved deep into the rock, ready to guide the precious juice toward the waiting collection basin. Marcus runs his weathered hands along the wooden beam, feeling the familiar grooves and indentations left by his father and his father before him. This press has witnessed the transformation of simple grapes into liquid gold for more than 50 years. Today, it will work its ancient magic once again, but only on the finest fruit, the grapes that Marcus has watched over like cherished children throughout the long growing season. The first baskets arrive, carried by his most trusted workers. These are not the grapes from yesterday's general harvest, but the select clusters that Marcus himself chose at dawn, walking through the vineyard with the reverence of a priest selecting offerings for the temple. Each bunch was examined, each grape tested for that perfect balance of sweetness and acidity that marks true excellence. The grapes rest in their woven baskets like jewels in treasure chests. Some glow with the deep purple of midnight skies, while others shimmer with the pale gold of early morning sunshine. Marcus lifts a cluster, feeling its weight in his palm, inhaling the intoxicating fragrance that speaks of warm earth, gentle rains, and countless hours of Mediterranean sun. One by one, the precious bunches are laid upon the pressing stone. The grapes seem to glow in the filtered sunlight, their skins taut and perfect, beaded with the morning's dew. Marcus works slowly, arranging each cluster with the care of an artist composing a masterpiece. The anticipation in the room is almost tangible, like the moment before dawn when the whole world holds its breath. The first gentle pressure begins. The wooden beam descends slowly, guided by the turning of the great screw mechanism. Marcus watches intently as the grapes yield to the ancient ritual, their skins splitting with the softest whisper, releasing their golden treasure. The first drops of juice appear like liquid amber, catching the light as they gather in the shallow channels of the stone. The sweet perfume rises immediately, filling the pressing room with an aroma so rich and complex it seems to have substance. It carries hints of honey and wildflowers, of sun-warmed earth and distant mountains. Marcus breathes deeply, closing his eyes for a moment to fully appreciate this first fragrant gift of the harvest. This scent will linger in the stone walls long after the pressing is finished, becoming part of the room's eternal memory. The juice begins to flow more freely now, trickling along the carved channels in tiny rivulets of gold. Each drop represents months of patient labor, the careful pruning of winter mornings, the gentle training of young vines through spring, the watchful protection through summer's heat. Now, gravity and gentle pressure transform that dedication into something approaching the divine. Marcus guides the flowing must toward the first amphora, a magnificent vessel crafted by the finest potter in Rome. The clay has been seasoned for years, its porous walls ready to breathe with the wine as it develops. As the first stream of golden juice enters the amphora, it seems to sing a gentle musical note that resonates in the stone chamber like a temple bell. The pressing continues in reverent silence, save for the soft sound of juice meeting clay and the occasional creak of the ancient wooden mechanism. Marcus moves around the press like a conductor leading an orchestra, adjusting pressure here, guiding flow there, ensuring that every precious drop finds its way to safety. The late morning sun has shifted, sending new patterns of light across the pressing room floor. The first amphora is nearly full, its clay walls already beginning to warm with the life growing within. Marcus dips a small cup into the golden stream and brings it to his lips. The taste is pure sunshine, sweet and clean, with just the hint of complexity that promises great things to come. As the final drops fall from the press, Marcus stands back and surveys the day's work. 6 amphoras now hold the first pressing, each one marked with the date and sealed with beeswax. They will rest here in the cool stone chamber, beginning their slow transformation from simple grape juice into something worthy of the emperor's table. The pressing room settles into peaceful quiet, its sacred work complete for another day. The descent into the fermentation caves feels like entering the earth's own sacred chamber. Stone steps, worn smooth by countless generations of winemakers, spiral downward beneath Villa Crescentius. Each footfall echoes softly against limestone walls that have witnessed this same ritual for over 2 centuries. The air grows cooler with every step, carrying whispers of grape must and the ancient mysteries of transformation. Marcus pauses at the heavy wooden door, its iron hinges darkened with age. Behind this threshold lies the heart of the vineyard's purpose, where humble grape juice surrenders to time and begins its journey toward becoming wine. He pushes the door open slowly, and the cool, humid air of the caves embraces him like an old friend returning home. The fermentation chamber stretches before him in gentle shadows, lit by oil lamps that cast dancing light across rows of massive clay amphorae. These vessels, some as tall as a man, stand like silent sentinels in the underground hall. Each one cradles hundreds of gallons of grape juice, beginning the slow, magical process that will transform today's harvest into next year's treasured vintage. The sound reaches him first, a soft, rhythmic bubbling that fills the cavern with nature's own music. It's the sound of fermentation beginning, of natural yeasts awakening to feast upon the sugars in the grape juice. To untrained ears, it might seem like mere noise, but to Marcus, it's a symphony that tells him everything is proceeding as it should. He moves between the amphorae with practiced grace, pressing his ear to each vessel's smooth clay surface. The bubbling varies from amphora to amphora. Some produce a gentle murmur, others a more vigorous conversation of tiny bubbles breaking the surface. This is how his grandfather taught him to listen to wine being born, to understand its needs without words. The temperature in these caves remains constant throughout the year, cool enough to prevent the fermentation from proceeding too quickly, warm enough to keep the process steady and strong. Roman engineers chose this location wisely, carving these chambers into bedrock that maintains perfect conditions without any human intervention. Marcus lifts the wooden lid from the nearest amphora and peers into its depths. The grape juice has already begun to change, no longer the bright, fresh liquid of yesterday's pressing, but something deeper, more complex. Tiny bubbles rise steadily to the surface, each one carrying carbon dioxide produced by the miraculous work of fermentation. With a bronze ladle, he draws a small sample and tastes it carefully. The sweetness of fresh grapes remains, but underneath, he can already detect the first hints of alcohol forming. The transformation has truly begun, sugars converting to alcohol and carbon dioxide through the ancient alchemy that even Rome's greatest philosophers cannot fully explain, only observe and guide. The caves hold more than wine in progress. Along the walls, older amphorae rest in patient silence, containing wines from previous harvests that continue their slow maturation. Some have been aging for 3 years, others for 5. These older wines whisper different stories of summers long past, of rains that came at just the right moment, of harvests celebrated under different constellations. Marcus checks the seals on several aging vessels, ensuring no air can enter to spoil the wine's development. The wax and resin mixture remains firm, protecting the precious liquid within. Time moves differently in these caves, not in the hurried pace of the vineyard above, but in the patient rhythm of maturation. A small spider has spun her web in the corner where 2 amphorae meet, and Marcus leaves her undisturbed. Even she has a role in this underground sanctuary, helping to maintain the delicate balance of the cave ecosystem. Everything here works together in harmony: temperature, humidity, darkness, and time. As he completes his evening inspection, Marcus extinguishes all but one lamp, leaving the fermenting wine to continue its work in near darkness. The bubbling continues, a gentle lullaby that will play throughout the night and for many nights to come. This sound has filled these caves for generations and will continue long after Marcus joins his ancestors. The stone steps feel different on the ascent, not just a return to the surface, but a journey from the mysterious depths where ancient magic still unfolds. Above, the evening stars are beginning to appear over the Roman hills, but below, in the cool darkness of the caves, the real stars of the vineyard are the countless tiny bubbles rising through grape juice, carrying with them the promise of wine. The fermentation has begun, and with it, another chapter in the endless story of the vineyard's gift to the world. The morning light filters through the stone archway of the cellarium, casting gentle shadows across the rows of amphorae that hold this year's precious harvest. Marcus moves quietly between them, his sandals whispering against the cool flagstones, each footstep deliberate and reverent. The air down here carries a different quality than the sun-warmed hillsides above, thick with the sweet, earthy scent of fermenting grapes and the mineral coolness of ancient stone. He pauses before the first vessel, running his weathered hand along its clay surface. The amphora is warm to the touch, alive with the slow transformation happening within. Through the narrow opening, he can hear the gentle bubbling that speaks of healthy fermentation, like a quiet conversation between the wine and the gods who watch over such sacred processes. This is where patience becomes prayer, where time itself becomes ingredient. The bronze cup in his hand catches the lamplight as he dips it carefully into the dark liquid. The wine clings to the sides, leaving traces that tell stories only he can read, the color deeper now than it was last week, the clarity improving with each passing day. He brings the cup to his lips and takes the smallest sip, letting the liquid rest on his tongue, teaching him secrets about the harvest, about the rains that came in Mayus, about the particular afternoon when the sun lingered longest on the southern slopes. There is sweetness still, but it is changing, becoming something more complex, more worthy of the vines that gave birth to it. The tannins speak of the grape skins that have surrendered their essence, while underneath runs a current of earth, the very soul of the hillside captured in liquid form. Marcus closes his eyes and lets the wine teach him what it needs. Too warm, perhaps, in this corner where the afternoon sun penetrates deepest. He makes a mental note to move this amphora tomorrow to the northern wall, where shadows linger longer and the stone stays cool throughout the day. Moving to the next vessel, he repeats the ritual with the same careful attention. This wine whispers different secrets, born from grapes that grew on the eastern slope where morning mist gathered longest, where the soil holds more clay than sand. The difference is subtle but unmistakable to his trained palate. This one will benefit from more time with the grape skins, perhaps another week before the first straining. The wisdom passed down from his grandfather, and his grandfather's grandfather, flows through him as naturally as the wine flows from cup to tongue. The third amphora holds wine from the oldest vines, those gnarled veterans that have watched over the hillside for decades. Their fruit always produces something special, wine with depth that cannot be rushed or replicated. As he tastes, Marcus feels the presence of all who have tended these vines before him, their hands in the harvesting, their knowledge in the choosing, their patience in the waiting. The wine tastes of continuity, of traditions that stretch back through generations like roots reaching deep into Roman soil. He adjusts the wooden cover on one amphora, loosening it slightly to allow more air to reach the wine within. Another he seals more tightly, sensing that this particular vintage prefers solitude in its transformation. Each decision feels both weighty and natural, like choosing which path to take on a familiar hillside, the way forward clear to those who have walked it many times before. The coolness of the cellarium wraps around him like a comfortable cloak as he tends to each vessel in turn. Some receive a gentle stirring with a long wooden rod, awakening the sediment that has settled, encouraging circulation and even fermentation. Others are left undisturbed, their stillness sacred, their progress measured in silence and patience rather than action. As the morning advances above ground, time moves differently here in the stone embrace of the cellarium. Each amphora represents not just wine, but a promise to the land that nurtured the grapes, to the family traditions that guide his hands, to the future occasions when this wine will grace tables and bring joy to those who share it. Marcus understands that his role is less creator than caretaker, tending to a process that began when the first vine was planted on this hillside and will continue long after his own hands have grown still. The gentle bubbling continues its quiet song as he completes his morning rounds, the wine slowly becoming what it was always meant to be. In the peaceful depths of the ancient cellarium, surrounded by the patient work of fermentation, Marcus tends not just to wine, but to the eternal rhythm of earth and season, of tradition and time. The morning mist clings to the hillside like a gentle embrace as Marcus steps into the vineyard, his sandaled feet crunching softly on fallen leaves. October's breath has transformed his beloved vines into something magical, a tapestry of burnished gold and deep crimson that catches the early light and holds it, glowing like captured fire against the pale Roman sky. The harvest is done. The amphora in the cellars below are sealed and marked, their contents beginning the slow alchemy of fermentation. But here, among the rows he has tended all year, a different kind of transformation unfolds. The vines, having given their precious gift, now turn inward, preparing for the long rest that winter will bring. Marcus breathes deeply, tasting the crisp air tinged with wood smoke from distant hearths. His breath forms small clouds that drift away like prayers offered to the gods of the harvest. The vineyard is quieter now, no longer the bustling orchestra of summer growth or the urgent symphony of picking season. Instead, a peaceful hush has settled over the terraced slopes, broken only by the whisper of wind through changing leaves and the distant call of migrating birds. He carries his pruning shears and a wicker basket, moving slowly down the first row. Each vine tells a story in the arch of its branches, the thickness of its trunk, the way its roots have found purchase in the rocky soil. Some are older than Marcus himself, planted by his father's hands when the world was younger. Others are his own plantings, still finding their place in the ancient rhythm of the hillside. The cleanup work is methodical, almost meditative. He removes the last clusters that weren't quite ripe enough for harvest, small, hard grapes that the sun couldn't fully sweeten. They fall into his basket with soft thuds, destined for the compost where they'll feed next year's growth. There's a poetry in this cycle, Marcus reflects, a wisdom that only comes from working close to the earth. As he works, memories of the season flow through his mind like wine through a filter. The anxious days of early spring when late frost threatened the tender buds. The relief when warm weather finally arrived to stay, bringing forth leaves like tiny green hands reaching for the sun. The long, hot days of summer when he walked these rows at dawn and dusk, watching the grapes swell and darken, tasting them daily for that perfect balance of sugar and acid. A vine leaf, brilliant as beaten gold, drifts down to land on his shoulder. Marcus pauses, gently lifting it to examine the intricate network of veins that once carried life through its surface. Even in dying, it holds beauty, nature's final gift before the long sleep. He places it carefully in his basket alongside the discarded grapes, honoring its service. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last wisps of mist. Now the vineyard reveals itself in full autumn splendor, row after row of vines dressed in their seasonal finery, the leaves rustling like silk in the gentle breeze. In the distance, smoke rises from the villa's chimney, and Marcus knows his wife is preparing the midday meal with herbs from her garden, and perhaps some of the fresh cheese they received in trade for last year's wine. He moves to the next row, his hands working automatically while his mind wanders to the lessons this season has taught him. The importance of patience, how the best grapes ripen in their own time, not when the keeper wishes them to. The wisdom of listening to the vines themselves, reading the messages in their leaves and the tension in their stems. The humility that comes from understanding his role as caretaker rather than master of this ancient partnership between human and vine. A cricket chirps from somewhere among the fallen leaves, its song a thread of music weaving through the peaceful morning. Soon, Marcus knows, even these small voices will fade as winter deepens. The vineyard will sleep beneath blankets of snow, gathering strength for another year's cycle of growth and giving. But that rest is still weeks away. For now, there is this golden interlude, this time of reflection and gentle preparation. Marcus straightens, looking out over his domain with the satisfaction of work well done and seasons well tended. The ancient hills stretch away in every direction, dotted with olive groves and other vineyards, all part of the great tapestry of Roman agriculture that feeds an empire. Tomorrow he will continue this peaceful work, moving through the rows like a shepherd tending his flock. But for this moment, surrounded by autumn's quiet glory, Marcus simply stands and breathes, grateful for the privilege of keeping faith with the vines and the turning of the seasons that connects him to something far larger and older than himself. The morning frost clings to the dormant vines like silver jewelry, each crystal catching the pale winter sunlight that filters through the bare branches of the olive trees. Marcus pulls his woolen cloak closer around his shoulders as he walks slowly between the rows, his breath visible in small puffs of vapor that dissipate quickly in the crisp air. The vineyard has settled into its deep winter sleep, but his work as keeper continues with the gentle rhythm of preparation and care. He carries a woven basket filled with dried grape leaves and straw, materials he has been collecting throughout the autumn months. The vines stand like ancient sentinels, their gnarled trunks dark against the pale earth, their branches now stripped of leaves and bearing only the memory of the season's abundant harvest. Marcus moves with the deliberate pace of someone who understands that winter work requires patience, each task performed with the knowledge that spring will eventually return. Kneeling beside the first vine, he begins the careful process of mulching the roots. His weathered hands work the dried leaves and straw around the base of each plant, creating a protective blanket that will shield the root system from the harshest frosts yet to come. The material crackles softly under his touch, and he can smell the earthy sweetness of decomposing vegetation, the natural perfume of the vineyard's winter rest. The pruning shears hang heavy at his side, their bronze blades worn smooth from years of faithful service. Marcus examines each vine with the eye of a master craftsman, identifying which branches grew too vigorously during the summer and now need to be cut back. He selects a shoot that extends too far from the main trunk, positioning his shears with precision before making a clean cut. The sound is sharp in the quiet morning air, followed by the soft thud of the severed branch falling to the ground. With each cut, Marcus shapes not only the vine's present form, but also its future growth. He removes the excess wood that would drain energy from the plant's core, leaving behind only the strongest canes that will bear next season's fruit. His movements are meditative, almost ritual-like, as he moves from vine to vine with the unhurried confidence that comes from decades of experience. The discarded branches pile up in neat rows between the vines, where they will eventually be gathered for kindling in the villa's hearths. The sun climbs higher, casting longer shadows across the terraced hillside. Marcus pauses in his work to survey the valley below, where smoke rises in thin columns from the chimneys of distant farmhouses. The other vineyard keepers are performing similar tasks on their own slopes, all participating in the ancient dance of preparation that has been repeated for countless generations. There is comfort in this shared rhythm, in knowing that across the Roman countryside, experienced hands are tending to sleeping vines with the same careful attention. A light breeze stirs the olive branches, creating a gentle susurrus that blends with the distant sound of sheep bells from the hillside pastures. Marcus returns to his work, gathering the pruned branches into bundles that he secures with strips of bark. These will be stored in the shed beside the pressing house, adding to the villa's supply of winter fuel. Nothing in the vineyard is wasted, every element serving its purpose in the eternal cycle of growth and rest. As the morning progresses, Marcus's movements take on an almost ceremonial quality. He checks the tension of the support stakes, ensuring that each post stands firm against winter winds. His fingers trace the rough bark of the vines, feeling for any signs of disease or damage that might need attention before spring's return. The vineyard feels peaceful under his care, settled and secure in its dormant state. The work basket grows lighter as he distributes the protective mulch, and the rows of vines take on a neat, orderly appearance that speaks of thoughtful stewardship. Marcus knows that these winter preparations are as crucial as any summer task, that the health of next year's harvest depends on the care he provides during these quiet months. Each vine properly mulched, each branch correctly pruned, contributes to the vineyard's future abundance. When the sun reaches its zenith, Marcus straightens slowly, his joints protesting slightly after the morning's labor. He looks back over the rows he has completed, satisfaction evident in his weathered features. The vines rest peacefully under their protective blankets, ready to endure whatever winter storms may come. Tomorrow he will continue with the remaining sections, but for now, the work is enough. The vineyard keeper's patient care ensures that when spring eventually returns to these ancient Roman hills, the vines will awaken strong and ready to begin another cycle of growth, sustained by the winter's gentle preparation. The morning sun casts long shadows across the vineyard, as Marcus makes his way down the familiar stone steps to the cellars. Today brings a visitor of great importance, Gaius Flavius, a wine merchant whose reputation spans from the bustling markets of Rome to the quiet corners of the countryside. His arrival yesterday evening has filled the villa with anticipation, and now the moment has come to present the fruits of an entire year's devotion. The cellars welcome Marcus with their eternal coolness, the thick stone walls keeping the temperature constant regardless of the season above. Rows upon rows of clay amphorae stand like silent sentinels, each one containing liquid poetry written in the language of sun, soil, and time. The air here holds the sweet, complex fragrance of fermentation, notes of fruit and earth mingling in perfect harmony. Marcus runs his weathered hand along the smooth surface of an amphora, feeling the subtle vibrations of the wine within. These vessels have become extensions of himself, each one a chapter in the story he has been writing all year. The weight of the merchant's expectations sits gently on his shoulders, not as a burden but as an honor. To share one's wine is to share one's soul, and Marcus has prepared his soul well. Footsteps echo softly on the stone stairs as Gaius Flavius descends, his fine robes rustling against the ancient walls. The merchant's eyes adjust to the torchlight, and Marcus watches as wonder spreads across his face. Even seasoned traders from the capital find themselves moved by the sacred atmosphere of these underground chambers, where time moves differently and wine sleeps peacefully in its clay cradles. "Welcome to the heart of my vineyard," Marcus says, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man who knows his craft intimately. He gestures to the nearest row of amphorae, their surfaces marked with careful notations indicating grape variety, harvest date, and the specific hillside from which the fruit came. Each marking tells a story that only Marcus can fully read. The merchant approaches reverently, understanding that he stands in the presence of something greater than commerce. "I have heard whispers of your wines in the taverns of Rome," Gaius says, his voice hushed in respect for the cellar's tranquility. "They speak of flavors that capture the very essence of these hills." Marcus nods, selecting a particular amphora with the care of a father choosing which child to present first. The vessel he chooses holds wine from the eastern slope, where the morning sun kisses the grapes earliest and longest. As he breaks the wax seal, the soft pop echoes through the chamber like a gentle sigh of contentment. The wine pours with the deep crimson of sunset, catching the torchlight and reflecting it back like liquid rubies. Marcus swirls the cup gently, watching as the wine's legs trace slow patterns down the clay walls. The aroma rises, complex, layered, telling the story of rain in early spring, scorching summer days, and cool autumn nights when the grapes reached perfect ripeness. Gaius accepts the cup with both hands, a gesture of respect that Marcus appreciates. The merchant brings the wine to his lips, closes his eyes, and tastes not just fermented grape juice but the very character of the land itself. Marcus watches patiently as the flavors unfold on the merchant's palate. First the bright fruit, then the earthy undertones, finally the subtle hint of the oak casks where the wine rested briefly before finding its home in clay. "This wine speaks of patience," Gaius murmurs, opening his eyes to meet Marcus's gaze. "And wisdom. I taste the decisions you made throughout the year, when to harvest, when to press, when to let the wine rest, and when to guide it gently toward perfection." Marcus feels a warmth spread through his chest, the deep satisfaction of recognition for work done well. He reaches for another amphora, this one from the northern hillside where the soil runs deeper and the vines must work harder for their sustenance. Each wine he presents tells a different story, yet all share the common thread of his careful attention and the land's generous gift. The torch flames dance against the stone walls as the tasting continues, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow that seem to breathe with the rhythm of the earth itself. In this sacred space beneath the hills, surrounded by the fruits of his labor and the appreciation of one who truly understands, Marcus feels the profound contentment that comes from a life lived in harmony with the seasons and the soil. Time moves slowly here in the cellars, measured not in hours but in the gentle evolution of flavors on the tongue and the deepening understanding between craftsman and connoisseur. The wine merchant's visit becomes more than a business transaction. It transforms into a celebration of the ancient art that connects earth to cup, season to season, and heart to heart. The morning mist clings to the hillsides like a gentle embrace as Marcus makes his way through the vineyard rows, his weathered hands trailing along the vine supports he knows by touch alone. Today brings something new to these ancient slopes, a young voice calling out uncertainly from the stone path below. The boy, no more than 14 summers, carries a simple pack and wears the eager expression of one ready to learn. Marcus pauses, remembering his own first day among these vines decades ago, when his grandfather's calloused hands first showed him how to coax life from the Roman earth. The cycle continues, as it has for generations, knowledge flowing like wine from one vessel to another. "You are Lucius?" Marcus asks, and the boy nods quickly, eyes wide as he takes in the sprawling vineyard that will become his world. "Good, come then." The vines are waiting, and they do not keep the same hours as the city folk. They begin at the oldest section of the vineyard, where the roots run deepest into the hillside. Marcus kneels beside a mature vine, its trunk thick with age and wisdom. "Place your hand here," he says softly, guiding the boy's palm to the rough bark. "Feel how solid it stands, how it draws strength from both earth and sky. This vine was planted when your father was no older than you are now." Lucius's eyes widen with wonder, and Marcus smiles at the familiar awe. He remembers asking his grandfather how something so still could hold such power, such potential for transformation. "Every vine tells a story," Marcus continues, his voice carrying the rhythm of seasons past. "Learn to listen, and they will teach you more than any scroll or tablet ever could." The morning sun climbs higher, casting dappled shadows through the leaves as Marcus demonstrates the art of reading the sky. He points to the clouds gathering on the distant horizon, their edges soft and white against the blue. "See how they move, like gentle sheep across summer pasture." This means rain, but not harsh rain, the kind that soaks deep without washing away. "The vines will drink well tonight." Young Lucius squints at the sky, trying to see what the older man sees so clearly. Marcus chuckles, a warm sound that mingles with the birdsong from the olive groves beyond. "It will come to you, boy. Your eyes will learn to read the language of wind and cloud, just as your hands will learn the songs the soil sings." They move through the rows methodically, Marcus explaining the subtle signs that speak of the vineyard's health. How the color of the leaves tells of the vine's thirst. How the angle of new growth reveals which way the wind has been blowing. How the morning dew gathers differently on healthy plants than on those that struggle. "My grandfather taught me that we are not masters here," Marcus says, crouching to examine the dark earth around a vine's base. He crumbles the soil between his fingers, letting Lucius see how it holds together yet falls apart at the right touch. "We are partners with something far older and wiser than ourselves. The Romans built their roads straight and their walls square, but here in the vineyard, we learn to follow curves, to work with what the land offers rather than forcing our will upon it." As the sun reaches its peak, they seek shade beneath the spreading branches of an ancient oak that grows at the vineyard's heart. Marcus shares his simple meal of bread, cheese, and olives, while explaining how the seasons flow into one another like water finding its level. "Spring teaches us hope," he says, his voice growing contemplative. "Summer shows us patience. Autumn rewards us with abundance. And winter gives us time to reflect, to plan, to remember." The boy listens with the intensity of youth meeting wisdom, absorbing not just the words but the way Marcus moves through his domain with such quiet confidence. Here is a man who has found his place in the world's great pattern, who understands his role in the endless conversation between human hands and nature's gifts. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, Marcus stands and brushes the earth from his hands. "Tomorrow we will begin with the morning inspection," he tells Lucius. "You will learn to see what the night has brought, what the dawn reveals. But for now, walk among the vines alone. Let them know you and begin to know them in return." The old keeper watches as the young apprentice wanders slowly between the rows, already beginning to develop the careful, observant pace that marks a true vineyard keeper. The ancient hills hold them both in their embrace, timeless and patient, ready to share their secrets with another generation willing to listen. The winter moon hangs like a silver coin above the rolling hills of Latium, casting long shadows across Marcus's vineyard. The ancient vines sleep beneath their blankets of frost, their gnarled branches reaching skyward like the weathered hands of old philosophers. In the stillness of the season, time moves differently here among these terraced slopes that have witnessed countless generations of keepers before him. Marcus steps from his stone cottage into the crisp night air, his breath forming small clouds that dissipate into the star-filled darkness. The leather satchel at his side contains his most treasured possessions: bronze pruning shears inherited from his grandfather, a whetstone smooth from decades of use, and wooden-handled tools whose grips have been worn to perfect curves by countless patient hands. Tonight, like every winter evening, he will tend to these faithful companions that serve him through each growing season. The workshop behind his home glows softly with lamplight. Inside, cedar shelves line the walls, holding clay amphora filled with oils and treatments, bundles of dried herbs hanging from the wooden beams overhead. The scent of beeswax mingles with lavender and rosemary, creating an atmosphere of quiet industry. Marcus settles onto a worn wooden stool, placing his tools on the workbench that his father carved from a single oak beam 40 winters ago. He takes up the bronze shears first, feeling their familiar weight in his palms. The metal has developed a rich patina over the years, a testament to faithful service. With gentle, rhythmic motions, he begins to sharpen the curved blades against the whetstone. The soft scraping sound creates a meditative rhythm, like a whispered chant that echoes through the stillness. Each stroke removes the smallest imperfections, preparing these tools for the delicate work of spring pruning when the vines will once again stir to life. The wooden handles receive equal attention. Marcus rubs them with linseed oil, working the golden liquid deep into the grain. The wood drinks thirstily, its surface growing smooth and supple under his careful ministrations. These handles will fit perfectly in his grip come springtime, partners in the ancient dance of cultivation that connects him to every vineyard keeper who has walked these hills since the time of the early kings. As the night deepens, Marcus extinguishes the oil lamp and steps outside once more. Above him, the winter sky unfolds its celestial map, the same stars that guided his ancestors in timing their plantings and harvests. He knows each constellation as intimately as he knows his own vines. There, the bright star of the plowman rises in the east, signaling that beneath the frozen earth, subtle changes have already begun. In 2 months' time, when this same star reaches its zenith at midnight, it will be time to begin the first tentative pruning of the year. Marcus walks slowly between the dormant rows, his footsteps crunching softly on the frost-brittle grass. The vines seem to pulse with hidden life, their roots drawing strength from the deep earth even in this season of apparent stillness. He pauses beside an ancient vine whose trunk has grown thick as a man's waist over its many decades. In the moonlight, he can see the small buds already formed, waiting patiently for warmth to call them forth. His mind drifts to plans for the coming year. The terraced slope on the southern hill would benefit from additional stone retaining walls, built in the old way with fitted stones that need no mortar. The soil there is rich but steep, and proper terracing would prevent the precious earth from washing away during the spring rains. He envisions the methodical work of quarrying limestone from the hillside, selecting each stone for its perfect fit, building walls that will endure for generations as his forebears' walls have endured. The irrigation channels, too, require attention. The winter rains will soon fill the mountain streams, and Marcus must prepare to guide this precious water through the careful network of channels and basins that distribute moisture evenly among his vines. It is work that requires both engineering skill and artistic vision, for water must flow naturally, following the contours of the land as a river follows its ancient course. In the workshop, the glowing embers of the brazier cast dancing shadows on the walls. Marcus returns to complete his evening routine, carefully replacing each cleaned and oiled tool in its designated place. Order and preparation, he has learned, are the foundations of all good work. When spring arrives with its urgent demands, everything must be ready. The vineyard settles deeper into its winter dream, and Marcus feels the profound satisfaction that comes from honest work done well. Around him, the eternal cycle continues its patient turn. the vines drawing strength from the earth, the stars wheeling overhead in their appointed courses, and he, the temporary keeper of this ancient place, tending the endless conversation between human care and nature's wisdom. The morning light filters through the stone archway of Marcus's wine cellar, casting gentle shadows across the rows of clay amphora that line the cool walls. The air here is different, thick with the earthy sweetness of fermentation and the whisper of centuries-old traditions. Today, Marcus has chosen to open vessels from years past, to taste how time itself has become an ingredient in his ancient craft. He moves slowly between the amphora, his weathered hands trailing along their smooth surfaces. Each vessel bears the mark of its vintage, scratched into the clay with careful precision. Here, the harvest of 3 summers ago. There, the wine from the year of the great rains. His fingers pause on one particular amphora, sealed with wax and marked with symbols that speak of a perfect season, when the grapes hung heavy and sweet on the vine, kissed by just the right balance of sun and gentle evening breezes. The wax seal breaks with a soft crack that echoes through the stone chamber. Marcus inhales deeply, and the first breath from the opened vessel carries with it the essence of that distant autumn. The aroma rises like a memory made tangible, notes of dark fruit mingling with hints of the Mediterranean herbs that grew wild between his vine rows, the faint earthiness of the hillside soil where his grapes found their strength. He pours the deep red liquid into a simple clay cup, watching as it catches the amber light filtering through the cellar's small window. The wine moves with the weight of years, its color rich and complex, speaking of transformation that happens only in the quiet darkness of patient waiting. This is not merely grape juice touched by time. This is poetry written in liquid form, each drop holding the story of rain and sunshine, of cool nights and warm days, of his own careful tending through the seasons. The first taste rolls across his tongue with the warmth of recognition. He can sense the very hillside where these grapes grew, can almost feel the morning dew that once clung to their skins. The wine has developed layers, a sweetness that speaks of perfect ripeness, a subtle complexity that whispers of the oak casks where it first rested, and beneath it all, the mineral essence of the Roman hills themselves, drawn up through roots that dug deep into ancient soil. Marcus closes his eyes and lets the wine linger, tasting not just the vintage but the memory of that harvest season. He remembers the particular golden quality of the light that year, how it seemed to make everything glow with promise. He recalls the sound of his workers singing as they gathered the grapes, their voices carrying across the terraced slopes in harmonies as old as the land itself. In this single sip, he tastes their laughter, their careful hands, their shared understanding of what it means to partner with nature rather than master it. He moves to another amphora, this one from a cooler vintage when autumn mists clung to the valley floor well into the morning hours. The wine from this vessel tells a different story, more delicate, with notes that seem to shimmer and dance on the palate. It speaks of patience in the face of uncertainty, of grapes that took their time to ripen, rewarding that patience with subtlety and grace. Each taste connects Marcus to the continuity of his craft, linking him to the generations of vineyard keepers who worked this same soil before him, and to those who will tend these vines long after his hands have grown too old to prune and harvest. The aged wine carries within it the wisdom of seasons, the accumulated knowledge of countless decisions made in harmony with the rhythms of earth and sky. As he samples wine from vessel after vessel, Marcus feels the weight and wonder of time itself. Here is the vintage from the year his grandson was born. Here the harvest that followed the great storm. Each wine has become something more than what it once was, transformed by the patient alchemy of years into liquid memory. The afternoon sun slants lower through the cellar window, and Marcus sets down his cup with a deep sense of satisfaction. Around him, the unopened amphora wait in their quiet rows, their contents still slowly becoming what they are meant to be. In the cool darkness of stone and clay, time continues its gentle work, turning the simple fruit of his vines into something approaching the eternal. He seals the opened vessels carefully, preserving what remains for future tastings, future moments of connection with the past. The wine will continue its slow transformation, and he will continue his patient partnership with time, tending not just to grapes and vines, but to the preservation of memories themselves, stored away in clay and darkness, waiting to be awakened by the simple act of uncorking and tasting the accumulated sweetness of well-lived seasons. The first hints of spring whisper through the villa as Marcus sits at his wooden desk, the surface worn smooth by decades of use. Before him lies a sheet of papyrus, its cream surface marked with careful sketches and notes written in his measured hand. The oil lamp flickers gently, casting dancing shadows across the plans he's drawn for the vineyard's future. Outside his window, the morning mist clings to the hillsides like a soft gray blanket, and somewhere in the distance, a thrush begins its tentative song. Winter's grip loosens day by day, and with each subtle sign of spring's approach, Marcus feels the familiar stirring of hope that comes with new seasons. His finger traces the outline of the southern slope, where he envisions new terraces carved into the hillside. The soil there catches the morning sun perfectly, holding its warmth through the day before releasing it gently into the cool evening air. It would be ideal for the Falernian grape variety he's been considering, a noble vine that might thrive in their particular microclimate. The charcoal stick moves across the papyrus as Marcus sketches another section of terracing. Each line represents hours of careful work, stones carried by hand, earth shaped with patience and reverence. But he can see it all so clearly in his mind, the neat rows following the natural contours of the land, the young vines taking root in soil prepared with both ancient wisdom and new understanding. He pauses to dip his reed pen in ink, making notes about drainage channels that would carry excess rainwater without eroding the precious topsoil. His grandfather had taught him to read the land's subtle messages, to understand where water naturally wants to flow, and Marcus has spent years observing how the seasons affect each corner of their property. The villa is quiet at this early hour, save for the gentle crackling of the fire in the adjacent room and the soft footsteps of servants beginning their morning routines. This peaceful time before dawn has become sacred to Marcus, when he can think and plan without interruption, when the future feels malleable as clay in a potter's hands. He turns his attention to a different section of papyrus where he's been experimenting with vine spacing calculations. The ancient texts speak of traditional methods, but Marcus has noticed that certain varieties seem to flourish with slightly more room to spread their roots, while others prefer the companionship of closer planting. Innovation need not abandon tradition, it can build upon it, like adding new stones to an existing wall. The lamp's flame wavers as a gentle breeze finds its way through the shutters, and Marcus looks up to see the first pale streaks of dawn touching the eastern horizon. Soon, the hills will be bathed in golden light, and he'll walk among his vines to check for signs of winter damage, to see which branches need pruning before the sap begins to rise. But for now, he returns to his plans, sketching a small building that would serve as both a shelter during harvest and a place to store tools. He imagines it built from the same honey-colored stone as the villa, its roof tiles weathered by sun and rain until they blend seamlessly with the landscape. Marcus sets down his charcoal and stretches, feeling the pleasant ache in his shoulders from yesterday's work repairing fence posts. Each task in the vineyard connects to every other, like threads in a tapestry. The planning he does now will influence decisions made months and even years in the future. He thinks of his father, who had also sat at this same desk, probably sketching similar plans on winter mornings, and his grandfather before him, each generation adding their own vision to the family legacy while honoring what came before. The vineyard is both ancient and eternally new, rooted in tradition yet always growing, always reaching toward the light. Outside, the mist begins to lift from the valleys, revealing the orderly rows of dormant vines that will soon burst with new life. Marcus rolls up his plans carefully, securing them with a leather cord. There will be time enough to implement these ideas once spring truly arrives. For now, it's enough to dream, to prepare, to feel the quiet satisfaction that comes from planning something beautiful and enduring. The thrush's song grows bolder as the sky brightens, joined now by the cheerful chatter of other birds welcoming the day. Marcus rises from his desk, ready to greet another morning in the vineyard, carrying with him the peaceful certainty that comes from knowing exactly where he belongs in the world's great turning. The first true breath of spring arrives on a morning when the air carries something different, a softness that speaks of earth awakening and life stirring beneath winter's fading grip. Marcus steps from his stone cottage as the sun climbs over the eastern hills, painting the valley in gentle gold and amber. The vineyard stretches before him, row upon row of weathered vines that have slept through the cold months, their gnarled branches dark against the warming soil. He walks slowly along the familiar paths, his leather sandals soft against the earth that has begun to lose its winter hardness. The ground beneath his feet feels different now, not the frozen, unyielding surface of the coldest months, but something that gives slightly, that breathes with the promise of growth. Small stones shift under his weight, and somewhere in the distance, he can hear the gentle trickle of water moving through the ancient aqueduct channels that feed his terraced hillside. The first sign comes when Marcus bends to examine a vine near the center of his oldest section. There, along a branch that seemed completely lifeless just days ago, tiny green buds have begun to swell. They are no larger than peppercorns, these first promises of the year to come, but they glow with an inner light that speaks of sap rising and life returning. He touches one gently with his weathered finger, feeling the firm roundness of potential contained within. Row by row, he moves through his vineyard, finding these small miracles everywhere. Some vines show only the faintest green flush along their branches, while others display dozens of swelling buds, each one perfectly positioned to catch the strengthening sun. The ancient cycle is beginning again, just as it has for countless generations before him, just as it did for his father and his father's father. A warm breeze moves through the valley, carrying with it the scent of wild herbs awakening on the hillsides, thyme and rosemary, sage and lavender. The air itself seems different now, lighter somehow, filled with moisture and warmth that penetrates deep into the soil. Marcus breathes deeply, filling his lungs with this promise of renewal, feeling his own spirit lift with the seasons turning. He pauses at the edge of his property, where the vineyard meets a grove of ancient olive trees. Here, the view opens across the entire valley, revealing other hillside vineyards beginning their own awakening. Thin wisps of smoke rise from distant farmhouses where other keepers are beginning their morning routines, tending to their own awakening vines, feeling their own quiet joy at winter's end. The soil beneath the vines has begun to darken with morning dew and the night's gentle moisture. Marcus kneels and takes a handful of earth, letting it run through his fingers. It crumbles perfectly now, not too wet, not too dry, but with that ideal texture that speaks of perfect conditions for root growth and nutrient flow. The earth smells rich and alive, carrying hints of decomposed leaves and the mineral essence of the ancient hillside. As he works his way back toward the cottage, Marcus notices other signs of spring's arrival. Small wildflowers have begun to appear between the vine rows, tiny white stars and delicate purple clusters that will attract the beneficial insects so crucial to his vineyard's health. Birds that disappeared during the coldest months have returned, their cheerful songs filling the warming air as they search for nesting sites among his carefully tended vines. The sun climbs higher now, its rays penetrating deeper into the valley, touching places that have known only shadow for months. Marcus can feel its warmth on his shoulders, through his simple linen tunic, warming not just his skin but something deeper, the quiet satisfaction of a man who has learned to live in harmony with nature's rhythms. He thinks of the year ahead, the careful tending required as these buds become leaves, the patient watching as tiny flowers appear and transform into the first small grapes. There will be months of steady work ahead, of monitoring and protecting, of making the thousand small decisions that separate a good vintage from a truly exceptional one. But for now, in this perfect moment of renewal, Marcus simply stands among his awakening vines and feels grateful. Grateful for this ancient partnership between human hands and patient earth, for the privilege of witnessing spring's return, for the simple joy of seeing life emerge once again from apparent death. The morning air carries the sound of distant church bells from the village below, marking another day's beginning. But here among the vines, time moves differently, measured not in hours but in seasons, not in days but in the slow, patient rhythm of growth and harvest, of dormancy and renewal. This is the vine's promise made new each spring, and Marcus receives it with the quiet joy of one who understands that some gifts are worth waiting for. The sun hangs low above the western hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that seem to echo the very wine that flows from these ancient vines. Marcus stands at the highest point of his vineyard, his weathered hands resting gently on a wooden post that has supported these grape clusters through countless seasons. The evening air carries the sweet fragrance of ripening fruit and the earthy scent of soil that has been worked by human hands for more than 3 centuries. Below him, row upon row of vines stretch across the rolling hillside like lines of poetry written in green ink across parchment. Each plant tells its own story, some with trunks thick and gnarled from decades of growth, others young and supple, their leaves catching the golden light. The grapes hang heavy now, purple-black clusters that seem to glow with their own inner fire in the slanted rays of the setting sun. Marcus closes his eyes and breathes deeply. The harvest is nearly complete, yet he knows this moment marks not an ending but a continuation of something far greater than himself. In his mind, he can see the ghostly figures of all who came before him, Roman vintners in their simple tunics, medieval monks with their patient hands, countless generations of farmers who walked these same paths, who felt the same soil beneath their feet, who watched the same sun paint these same hills in evening light. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves, creating a whispered conversation among the vines. The sound is almost musical, a soft rustling that speaks of wind and weather, of seasons turning, of time flowing like wine from an ancient amphora. Marcus opens his eyes and looks out over his domain, though he knows now that the word his carries little meaning. He is not the owner of this land. He is its temporary guardian, its current keeper in an endless chain of stewardship that stretches back to times when Roman legions marched these very roads. The realization brings him profound peace. He thinks of the grape he picked just this morning, its skin taut and sweet, carrying within it the memory of winter rains and summer sun. That same grape will become wine, will age in oak barrels in the cool darkness of the cellar, will one day grace tables and warm hearts, creating new memories that will layer upon the countless memories already held in this sacred earth. Far below in the village, smoke begins to rise from evening fires. The day's work is ending, families are gathering, children are being called home to supper. Yet here among the vines, Marcus feels connected not just to the present moment, but to all moments, past and future woven together like grapevines around their supporting posts. He is part of something eternal, something that flows through time like wine through a cup. The sky deepens to purple now, and the first stars appear like scattered diamonds against velvet. Venus shines particularly bright tonight, the evening star that Roman poets once called the lover of the western sky. Marcus has read those ancient verses, has traced their words with his finger on yellowed pages, marveling at how the same star witnessed by Caesar's vintners still watches over these same hills. A nightbird calls softly from the olive grove beyond the vineyard, its song liquid and clear in the cooling air. Soon the nocturnal symphony will begin, crickets adding their gentle chorus, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of small creatures moving through the grass. But for now, in this perfect moment of transition between day and night, there is only profound stillness. Marcus places his palm against the bark of an old vine, feeling its rough texture, its solid strength. This plant has weathered storms and droughts, has bent but never broken, has given its fruit year after year in the endless cycle of seasons. Like the land itself, like the tradition of wine making, like the very hills that cradle this valley, it endures. As darkness gathers around him, Marcus makes his way slowly down the hillside toward his cottage, where warm light glows in the windows and the evening meal awaits. His footsteps follow the ancient paths worn smooth by countless other feet. Tomorrow will bring new work, new challenges, new small joys in the life of a vineyard keeper. But tonight, as he carries with him the peace of this moment among the vines, he knows he is exactly where he belongs, a temporary guardian of something eternal, a keeper of the endless harvest that connects earth to sky, season to season, heart to heart, in the timeless rhythm of the vine.